Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host Rashid. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the most powerful platform for truth. I want to ask you all if you can hear me very very well. Hold on one second. Let me try something real quick. I need to check the volume because it seems like we're having problems streaming to Rumble, to Locals, and to Odyssey. Give me 1 second, please. I'm begging you all to give me 1 second so I can check the volume. You might hear a little feedback second. I'm trying something. Okay, there we are. All right, we are. So you guys can hear me. All right, we're waiting for Carl Zha to join us. He's in the U.S., so he may be a little bit behind. But he sure. Okay, my audio is good. Thank you, Holly Horn. Thank you. Thank you, Laugh It Off. Thank you too for joining. We're gonna wait for Carl to meet us in the booth so that we can start chopping it up on everything from the latest with the Niger situation, because as you can see, that has dissipated. The news of Niger and the military involvement of France and the United States and the other colonial powers have dissipated. Now, we want to talk about that. We want to talk about the situation that is brewing in the Asia Pacific that a lot of you are not aware of. We also want to talk about a few things that are happening right now with Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and it seems like that the empire is having a come to Jesus moment. And if you're Muslim, a come to Muhammad moment, right? As they're saying that all of the policy, all of the monkey poop that they keep slinging up against the wall, all of the at the end of the day, it's their wall. So they are the ones that will have to clean it up. And so we're waiting for Carl. Let me hit him up one time because I know Carl is he's come from Bali and he's in the United States. So give me 1 second. Let me hit him up. Make sure he's aware of the time a little bit. Give me 1 second. I don't know why I didn't do this. Let's see. Oh, okay. He sent me a message. He said he's running 5 minutes late. So Holly. Yeah, watch if you have to catch the replay, catch the replay. Carl said he'll be here in about 5 minutes. He's running 5 minutes behind. So we'll give him peace to you, Holly. And when you come back in on the next show, I'll see you, I'll remember you, and I'll rent you up. And thank you for coming. But everybody, Carl just told me he'll be 5 minutes late. He's running a little bit late, and that's understandable. But I want to get into a few things. Let's talk about this Niger thing that dissipated from the news, right? Because remember, for a while it was front page news, and all of a sudden you hear nothing about the West African states military intervention. All of a sudden now you hear nothing about the U.S. Pushing for military intervention or pushing for the overthrow of the so-called junta. Now you hear nothing about France demanding the reinstallment of their Western lackeys. You hear none of that. I want to go to an article, and this article was a few days ago. Give me a second to pull it up. Okay, because this caught my eye. And I did something right before the show. I wanted to make sure that I was on point. You know me. I got to make sure that what I tell you is the truth, because if I don't, everybody will try to challenge it. So I put these keywords in here. Where is it at? Where is it? I just had it. Macron recalling ambassador to Niger, right? And Sputnik International comes up. Excuse me. And so this is the article, and something just didn't gel right with this article. I read the first, maybe the first paragraph or two, and in that something didn't gel with me right with this. And this is why I wanted to have this as one of the first discussions as we lead. We'll use that as the lead-off subject into all of the other theaters or arenas of war, or all of the other geopolitical and economic theaters of war, okay? Because believe it or not, war is on every level right now: political, geopolitical, technological, industrial, financial, everything. The Western world is losing its footing. So, of course, it is going to fight like hell to maintain its position, even as its feet continue to be pulled from up under it by someone tugging on the rug of Western domination. In this article that came up on Sputnik International. It's titled Macron Recalling Ambassador to Niger, French Embassy's Staff and Troops. Now, here is something very important. Let's read the first couple of paragraphs together, okay? Because it's very important. I went to the to Google and I put these words in, so you can do this too. I always try to show you how I come across the information and how I find this stuff. Put in these keywords: how many French troops in Niger? Not how many French troops are in Niger, but how many French troops in Niger. When you put how many French troops, the rest of it will fill itself out on Google. And then you just hit the enter. And at the beginning of it, it says France will withdraw its troops and ambassador from the West African country of Niger, meeting one of the demands of the military junta, which seized power in July. Now, the NPR has it like this. The article right up under it says France is pulling its ambassador and 1,500 troops. So there's an acknowledgement that France has at least 1,500 troops. Good night, brother. I'm stuck in traffic listening to you. Good night, Joel. Good night. Thank you, man. Thank you for listening in traffic, man. I hope that you will get an equal or greater payoff with your time. I really, really appreciate it. I'm telling you, I really appreciate it. From my heart to your ears, I really appreciate it. Okay. And from my mouth to your heart, I appreciate it. But listen to what it says. Now, some people are saying that France has upwards of 5,000 troops in Niger. But we're going to go by NPR's account of the situation. And for those of you who are joining us, I got a message from Carl. He'll be about 5 minutes late, 5 or 10 minutes late. He says 5, but I give him 10 minutes late. Okay. Some things happen. That's life. So until he gets here, we're going to address this, and then I'll bring it to his attention and we'll address it a little bit more. Okay. So bear with me. So this article, this NPR article says France is pulling its ambassador and 1,500 troops. So we're going to go with NPR. We're not going to use the 2 to 3 or 4 or even 5,000 that others are reporting. We're going to use the minimum of 1,500 troops. Okay. Now let's go to this article that I pulled up, because that makes my point even that much more heavy, weighty in facts. So the article reads like this: France is recalling French ambassador to Niger, Sylvain, I can't pronounce the last name, so I'm gonna butcher it, Ite. All staff of the French embassy and all French troops in the West African country, President Emmanuel Macron said on Sunday. The ambassador in Niamey, as well as all staff of the embassy, will return to France in the coming weeks or months. This is key right here. I want you to understand what I'm going to repeat that part again. The ambassador in Niamey, as well as all staff of the embassy, will return to France in the coming weeks or months, Macron told a French broadcaster. He added that the military cooperation with Niger is over, and French troops will leave the country by year end, by the end of the year. Okay. Now, that is the point that I wanted to hear right here. Okay. If France is up to its words, then why would it take weeks to months to empty its embassy staff from Niger? Whenever they want to deploy staff and troops there, it only takes hours and days, right? So why would it take weeks and months if you are only have the minimum staff in Niger at the moment? I'm asking you these things because this is something that needs to. Oh, I see Carl. I'll bring him in just a second. I want to finish this point here. I'm gonna bring Carl in just a second. So. And I have Carl to talk about this also. This will be our lead-in subject to all of the other geopolitical things that are going on. So if France has a minimum staff, why would it take a so-called global power weeks to months to remove the rest of the staff from the country, and then thereafter, the end of the year, to remove only 1,500 troops? I'm asking you this. Now, I know the answer, but I'm going to get Carl. I'm going to bring Carl in, and I'm going to give him the floor, and I'm going to ask him what does he think about this situation. So I'm going to bring Carl in right now. How's it going today, my guy?
Hi, Rashid. Now I'm
Ah.
speaking to you from the U.S. I'm thinking I'm gonna do like the Borat, the cultural learning of America.
Carl, what do you think if France says that it is pulling its ambassador and its embassy staff out, and it only has minimum staff there? Why would it take weeks to months to pull out the minimum of embassy staff? And if you only have 1,500 troops, why would it take to years in to move them out of Niger?
Well, that's my question, Rashid. When I first heard they say they're going to do it by the end of the year, my question is, why not now?
Right.
It's not that hard. It's just fly in your transport military planes and you can airlift the 1,500 troops out in a couple of days. Why do you need like 3 months? I mean, what's your cooking? What? I mean, this is after they have repeatedly refused to vacate their embassy. And now they're saying, oh, we need some time. Well, what have you been doing for the last couple of months? I can't hear you, Rashid. What
Can you hear me
now? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So what we have these problems, but anyway, what do you think is going on? Because the first thing that hit my mind is, why would, if you have a minimum staff in the embassy, why would it take you weeks to months? And if you only have 1,500 troops and you are planning to acknowledge that you're no longer wanted there, especially after you say that all and I'm going to quote him directly, the ambassador in Niamey, as well as all staff of the embassy, will return to France in the coming weeks or months, Macron told French broadcaster. He added that the military cooperation with Niger is over. So if it's over, why would it be years in before you take your military out of Niger? I mean, could there be another underhanded imperial motive why to stall this and take this over weeks and months and even to the end of the year?
Well, you can never put it past the French. I mean, like Confucius said, listen to one's words, but watch their actions.
Mm-hmm.
And right, words is cheap. You Western politicians are great at delivering speeches, delivering promises, but we know they don't fulfill their promise. So we're gonna have to see what France actually do in the coming weeks or months.
And what do you think is going on with Iraq? I was reading a few days ago that Iraq has ordered that within the next few months or whatever, that all U.S. dollar transactions will stop and they will use the Iraqi dinar, and that it would no longer be acceptable to use the U.S. dollar in Iraq.
Well, this is a global trend, Rashid. I mean, nobody wants to be liable by using U.S. dollar to be liable to U.S. sanctions. I mean, Iraq has been under pressure, has been militarily occupied by the United States for decades, and even after U.S. quote unquote pulled out, they still exceeds a lot of pressure. Remember, they assassinated Soleimani in Iraq,
Mm-hmm.
right? U.S. still have military asset in Iraq. U.S. also have military asset next door in Syria, which they're also illegally occupied. And these all these global South countries they're fed up. They're fed up being held hostage to the U.S. dollar and to the U.S. military hegemony.
Well, now we hear that the UAE and multiple other nations in the Middle East and Northern Africa will start using their national currencies in the trade with China, and not just the trade with China, which I believe is one of the main instigators in the push for economic independence, but they're going to use them within trade with each other, which stops the mafia man from getting his cut. How do you think that the mafia man will react to nations constantly say, hey, you're no longer able to get in our business, tell us what to do, and we're no longer getting a cut? How do you think the U.S. will act?
Well, I mean, I don't know if people might remember that clip from Marco Rubio, and when he was freaking out in front of Congress that, oh my God, they're pushing for de-dollarization. Few
Mhm.
5-10 years down the road, we won't be able to sanction them anymore. Well, that's exactly the point. People don't want to be arbitrarily sanctioned by the United States, and countries like Iraq and UAE, guess what? Their currency can be backed by something.
Mhm.
They have oil and gas. That's
Mhm.
the real commodities that's desired by the global community. What is a U.S. dollar backed by? The U.S. dollar is backed by your trust, quote unquote, in the U.S. government, and it's IOU essentially. It's IOU. You're trusting the U.S. government is going to pay you back the same value of the dollars that you initially purchased with. So people are seeing through the scam right now, and they say, okay, it's better that we stick to our own currency because our own currency actually worth something.
Mhm.
We have the commodity to back our own currency with, and we can get manufactured goods from China. What do we need United States for?
Well, you know, I find this rather ironic that tensions are now brewing between the Philippines and China, um, and the United States has expanded multiple areas of bases across the Philippines in her effort to try to surround China and to hem the Chinese military in. And at the same time, there was an announcement that China has led the BRICS nations to start selling off large assets of dollar denominated bonds or whatever. Do you think that all of those things are connected? And what is on the mind of the empire to continue to antagonize the very nations that fund its military and its government? I mean, it seems to me that it's lunacy.
Well, I mean that's the U.S. Congress and the much of the U.S. government is basically a lunatic asylum right now. These people are insane. These people are cut off from the daily reality of the average American people they're supposed to be represented. And right now, the funny thing that you mentioned Philippines because the U.S. the China Philippine tension just wasn't there during the previous Filipino presidency of Duterte. Because the Duterte said, China, we like to work with you. Whatever difference we have, we can work through it. But most important thing is we want to develop trade ties. We want to be more independent from the United States. So things were doing good. And guess what? As soon as Duterte is out, that was what U.S. game was. They were waiting for Duterte to get out of the office so they can buy off his successor,
Mm-hmm.
Bongbong Marcos, which they did succeed. Bongbong Marcos, before he was elected, he was making all these promises about, oh, we're going to continue friendship with China, we're going to continue cooperation. But I guess United States made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So right now, we are dealing with mafia here. So I think the mafia terms are accurate to describe the U.S. foreign policy actions. And so right now, Bongbong Marcos has fully signed on with the U.S. containment strategy of China, including inviting U.S. military bases back to the Philippines, which from where they've been kicked out of in the 1990s. U.S. had military bases, both naval and air base, the Clark Air Base in the Philippines since the Vietnam War. And then in 1990s, the people of the Philippines decided enough is enough. All these U.S. Military men, only thing they bring is crime, crime, prostitution, and they want them out. And that it was done. And now U.S. is trying to sneak back in. And their excuse for coming back is, of course, the China tensions. And they are cranking up tension with China, not just China, but also Russia. They a news just broke out that U.S. Space Force is talking about putting up a station in Japan. Before I thought U.S. The only thing I know about U.S. Space Force is that comedy show, right? It's supposed to be a joke. Like, what the hell? What do you do with the U.S. Space Force? But what seriously, what they're trying to do is they're trying to degrade the nuclear deterrent possessed by China and Russia by placing all these anti-ballistic missiles in South Korea. U.S. already put the so-called THAAD, the terminal high altitude defense, but it's an anti-ballistic missile system they put in South Korea, ostensibly against North Korea, but everybody knew it was against China and Russia, because by placing these anti-ballistic batteries closer to China and Russia, they can intercept any missile launch uh, faster, and before they could threaten continental United States. So this is what U.S. is trying to do, because U.S. no longer believe in MAD, the mutually assured destruction. That was what made Cold War a Cold War. This is no direct confrontation between the two nuclear armed superpower of Soviet Union and United States, because both governments recognize that, okay, we're nuclear armed powers. Nothing good is going to come out of a direct confrontation. But now the U.S. decision makers say, hey, what if we put all these anti-ballistic missile defenses a ring around Russia and China? We can blunt their nuclear deterrent. So then we don't need to be afraid of nuclear retaliation. Then we can, keep on pushing for military confrontation, like what they're doing in Ukraine right now. Biden had just decided to go all in on Ukraine. Zelensky was in Canada. He got an overwhelming welcome from Canada. And you have Trudeau saying Canada is going to be with Ukraine all the way until defeat of Russia. But guess what? You cannot defeat Russia. Who is Canada? I mean, Canada, are you kidding me? Like, Canada is just a hanger of the United States. I mean, everybody know Canada doesn't have an independent foreign policy. When Washington says jump, they have to say how high. And Canada, which is interesting, because right now Canada is involving in a row with India, and which and a lot of people are saying, well, look, why is, like, we never heard that Canada has an independent foreign policy, so Washington must be behind this somehow. And from the leaks that's been reported in the press right now, it looks like the Canadian claim that the Indian government agent assassinated one of the separatists in Canada, that intelligence was given to them by one of the Five Eye countries. Mm-hmm. And we all, Five Eye countries is the Anglo Five: the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. I don't think anybody believed New Zealand was the one that was monitoring the Indian diplomatic cables and giving that intelligence to Canada. So, whereas we know about US capability from Snowden leaks, we know US eavesdrops on everyone. So somehow US is decide to pass on this intelligence, whether true or false, to the Canadian intelligence and say, hey, we believe that the Indian special agent has assassinated one of your citizens in Canada. Maybe you should raise your voice. And that's what Trudeau did. And I think they're doing that because India hasn't been completely on board with the Western alliance in their sanction against Russia, because India continued to buy oil from Russia. And during the G20 meeting in Delhi, India made sure there's not going to be a table of resolution condemning Russia. So this is U.S. and its allies trying to kind of tweak India a little bit to remind them, hey, we can still make you uncomfortable. Maybe, yes, we do need you to be in the anti-China alliance, but we still have leverage over you. And I think this is why it's getting a very strong reaction from India right now, because unlike Canada, India actually pursue an independent foreign policy. They do what's best for India, no matter, what their domestic policy is. But in the international arena, India do what's best for the Indian foreign policy, not what's best for Washington. That role is being played by Canada, UK, and all those puppy dogs of US. And this is what US don't like, because this is also why US really hates China and Russia, because these, like Lavrov said, China and Russia are the truly sovereign nations, because they are not answerable to US pressures.
And could it be also because I was thinking about this whole situation, how the United States tried to bribe and then threaten South Africa against Russia and China, and it didn't work. And then they tried to do the same thing with Brazil, and it didn't work. And I believe they're trying to figure out which one is the weakest link of the BRICS so that they can destroy the BRICS. And they thought that they had bribed India, and they thought India was on side because they offered all of this technology and all of this investment to be a counterweight to China. And I believe that also plays a big thing. But isn't it ironic that the Nazis were celebrated in the Canadian Parliament? I want to say that part too, because I don't want to forget that. They were celebrated in the Canadian Parliament, and the Western world celebrates it, and they destroyed the wealth of, what is that rapper, Kanye West, for saying something um, against something, I think it was pertaining to Jewish ownership or something, and they destroyed him, and yet they're elevating the very Nazis that they claim to be against. And the, what is her name? One of the Canadian officials, I think her name is Chrystia Freeland. Her
Freeland,
grandfather
yes.
was a Nazi. Her grandfather
Yes.
was a Nazi. And,
Yeah.
and on one hand, they want us to believe that this is the free West, and that is fighting against fascism and communism and Nazism, and they're doing everything that they can to fund and extol the Nazis in Ukraine and around the world. Is that because they feel that they are desperate, because all of their plans to keep China in check, they wanted China to rise, but only so far. They never wanted Russia to reemerge. They never wanted the South Africa to have an independent policy. Isn't that desperation setting in? And they're just trying to latch their train on anything that can keep it going in motion before collapse.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now they're at the stage where they're just trying to fling all the fishes on the wall and see what sticks. And this is it's but this desperation is dangerous because
Mm-hmm.
US still possess a lot of weapons and a lot of arsenals, and they're trying to proliferate all over the world for the benefit of the military industrial complex. And we have to and let's, like, about the Nazi thing, people just have to see, just look up all the early NATO commanders. It's like all the Nazis after World War II, they just changed uniform. They just switched
Right.
Nazi uniform for the NATO uniform. They literally becoming the NATO commanders in Europe. And then
Mm-hmm.
Canada, Chris Freeland's grandpa is just one among many of the Nazi refugees that went to Canada after World War II. And when they honor this guy, it's like, it's really amazing how there was so little pushback in the mainstream media. I mean, they literally say, "Oh, this 98-year-old veteran who fought Russia in World War II." Like, wait, who fought Russia in World War II? I mean, come on. I mean, it's just like, I mean, like, of course, people are so dumb right now by our educational system, by our propaganda machine. People probably don't even realize, Soviet Union was part of the Allies
Mm-hmm.
in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's sad. At the same time, um, I just don't think they're ideologically opposed to Nazism. I don't think that's, they say they are,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, action speaks louder than the
Right.
words. I mean, so far
Right.
they have been, they know what Azov Battalion is. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's like, it's really a big challenge for mainstream media to film photos of military in Ukraine without one with Nazi insignia. I mean, like, they do this again and again and again, and it, like, oh, these are the heroes we're supposed to look up to, and then you zoom in and they have a freaking, like, SS symbol, like, tattooed on. So it's, we are at the point where, they're not, they're saying that, oh, the denazification is just a Russian excuse, yet they keep on showing all these Nazis in uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, this is, right now, I think even some of the think tanks in Washington are admitting that the war in Ukraine is not going well. It's not going well for the NATO alliance. But I think at this point it's no longer about winning. So it's for them it's like Assange said, it's about forever war. It's just like Afghanistan. U.S. didn't go to Afghanistan to win a war. They went to Afghanistan to launder all this money
Mm-hmm.
into the military industrial complex. I mean, this whole thing is a scam. It's a grift to funnel everybody's money. Like including all the money of the taxpayers in U.S. and in Europe back into the pockets of Lockheed Martin, of Boeing, of Raytheon, of all these and all these think tankers affiliated with all these defense industries. This is what U.S. has been doing. The U.S. This is also explains the U.S. Sanction on China, because U.S. tech sanction on China is actually killing the U.S. tech industry right now.
Mm-hmm.
When the biggest customers of the U.S. tech industry is China, and they're saying no, you can't sell to China because national security. I mean, so it's obviously not benefiting U.S. tech industries, but it's benefiting the defense industry. So the U.S. weapon manufacturers are choking off everybody's livelihood, just to fatten themselves. This is, I don't know how long. I mean, everything will work until it doesn't. So I'm interested to see, how we all know this is not sustainable. The empire is not sustainable. We're just waiting for it to reach the breaking point at this point.
And their policies. Before I get to a main point that I want to say something. Go back on something you're saying about how they're trying to choke off China's industries by choking off their own industries. They need the revenue for research and development, yet they're trying to stop China's purchases of technology, which stymies their own growth because they need the funding for research and development to progress and to grow and to continue on. I mean, the policies of these people, sometimes it blows my mind, because I'm saying, are these people actually thinking, or they're just in a room with the dunce hats on and playing tag, you're it? Because the things, they don't make sense. The policies don't make sense. They're not rational policies. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, even the people, tech industry insider in U.S. are saying these guys don't know what they're doing. All these people making policy in Washington, they know very little about tech. They know very little about the state of U.S. tech industry. And he said their policies are killing us. Their policies are killing the U.S. tech industry. And but on the other hand, I don't know if these people really cares, because their grease, their bread is getting butter elsewhere. They're getting grease from all the defense manufacturers who are profiting from all these high tension with China and Russia. They're now their factories are humming to try to supply weapons to Ukraine, and now they're trying to sell more weapons to Taiwan. One of the U.S. Best customers. And so right now it's like this giant parasites on the U.S. economy. That's getting bigger, and I think the American people really just need to wake up to the fact that they're being taken for a ride. One thing that shocked me when I came to the United States is I take my family. We landing LAX, and I took my family to a Burger King. Oh, Carl's Jr. Actually, Carl's Jr. I took my son, my junior, to Carl's Jr. And then and we got like this one burger meal and 3 pieces of chicken tender, and cost over $20. I was like, what? I mean, I haven't been in US for 4.5 years, but it's still crazy. Like, you go to a fast food restaurant and drop $20, and I talked to my parents. They say, yeah, the price really have gone up in the last couple of years. But we all know why. We all know why the prices go up, because the Ukraine war, because of sanction, which the U.S. have inflicted upon itself and its allies. There doesn't need to be economic sanctions that's sanctioning on the livelihood of average people in U.S. and Europe. Yet, that's what they do.
So back to like the stoking of tensions between China and the Philippines, and I think all of this stuff is connected with the Russian situation, the recolonization process they're trying to do in Africa, the overthrow through the color revolutions in Latin America. I believe they are frightened to death. They had a plan to weaken Russia and then cause division between China and India, and then recolonize Africa to maintain their position. And I believe that they didn't believe that China would rise as quick as it did and would be on such a solid foundation. I believe they bought into the all of the propaganda that China's economy was unstable and it was built upon debt. And isn't that something? The debt nation is talking about another nation's economy built on debt. But look, I want to bring up an article. This comes up from business. It's BRICS Business, and the article said it was published September 25th, 2023, and the title of it is BRICS countries dump $123 billion in U.S. treasuries in 2023. Now, they see China as the linchpin for this because they have always said that it's China that is secretly supporting Russia's economy. It is China that is secretly helping South Africa evade U.S. sanctions or doing this. It is China that is helping Brazil to move away from the U.S. dollar. Everything, I believe, because China is I often say this, a non-white, non-Western country. I believe it is harder for them to accept the rise of China because you fear what you don't know. And especially when you have exploited others, you feel that people get in your position, they have the same mind, the same thought, and the same actions to do it to you and others. I believe that is one of the main reasons why they are so frightened of the rise of China. And one more main thing, I want to put this in here, and I'm going to let you address it and have the floor with this. Another reason is because of this article that came out on Insider. and it came out September 15th, and I read it on one of my shows before. And the title of the article is China has the capacity to build PLA combat ships at 200 times the rate that the U.S. can per leaked U.S. Navy intelligence. And it says China's shipbuilding capacity has dwarfed U.S. capabilities per leaked U.S. Navy intelligence. A Navy spokesperson confirmed the leaked material's authenticity to Fox News Digital. I believe when you have dominated in so many arenas for so long, and now you see someone that doesn't look like you, someone that doesn't think like you, someone that doesn't act like you, and someone that won't bow to you because, hey, I'm the emperor. You must bow to me. You must pay your obeisance to me. I believe this is one of the main reasons that is driving the hunger for war with the United States with China. What say you on that?
There's also fear. There's a deep fear among U.S. and European leaders that once China becomes strong, that China will do to them
What
what
they
they
did.
used to do to China. Just like 180 years ago, 100 years and 80 years ago. And because that's how they viewed the world. They always viewed the world in a very zero sum rule of the jungle. The strong eats the weak. They used to be the strong, and that's the way they see. That's the way the world is. And now they're afraid the table is being turned, and so there's a deep fear. This is what drives all this yellow peril reporting in our mainstream media right now. China is a big empire, imperial baddie. It's like no, you are the baddie. You are still the baddie. But right now, it's right now people in Washington, they are kind of living their own bubble. Like they say there's a Beltway bubble. They kind of it's harder for them to accept the world has moved on without them. We moved on beyond them, and they're still. This is why they're trying to revive the Cold War. Now they're openly talking about bringing back the Cold War. You have a former U.S. Air Force General Spaulding on Twitter. He was saying, we cannot have a hot war with China because that will lead to nuclear Armageddon. But we can have a Cold War. We can have Cold War. Just like Soviet Union that collapsed because they were cut off from the Western economy. We can do the same thing to China. As long as we cut off China from trade links with us. He said the China will collapse on its own because they lack freedom, et cetera, et cetera. Wait, if China will collapse on their own, then why do you need sanctions? Right?
Right.
Why do you need to wage economic war if they're just gonna collapse? The reality is China is doing really well, in the world trading system, and this is why the U.S. is reacting. So yeah, man, we live in interesting times, and you have like those old fossils like Mitch McConnell, who was openly saying we need to fight Russia in Ukraine because we cannot let China win. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, they're already making. People are trying to blame China, trying to say, oh, China is supporting Russia. On the other hand, they're saying we need to defeat Russia because we cannot let China win. It's like, so exactly. Whenever they're saying something about China, it's 100% projection. They're already thinking it. They're already thinking, oh, we gotta defeat Russia, and then China is next. And then they turn around and tell China, don't you dare help Russia. You gotta stand with the international community, which means us. And when China's like, why is it any our business? And then they get offended. It's like, you are not playing by the rule-based international order. And so we're in this like kind of, they live in this total bizarro world, right? And a total bizarro world. They've they're expecting everyone play by their rules. Like this General Spaulding, he said, we're gonna cut off China. Well, you're gonna cut off yourself. The rest of the world is still gonna trade with China. Why should they, just because United States want to cut tie with China, they should cut tie with China. So what you're going to have is China will continue to trade with the rest of the world, and the U.S. and its allies will have to put up this wall or this barrier, which is just going to make the inflation much worse. It's going to make the economic situation in U.S. and Europe much, much worse than it is even now. And I have to say, the American people are incredibly patient to put up with all these jackasses in Washington. If I was shocked by kind of the inflations happening in U.S., how did the people? Maybe you can speak to this, Rashid. You live in U.S. for the last 4.5 years.
It's like this, and this is what I believe. Okay. I believe until the house of cards fall, the people are being pacified so much with propaganda. They're still living in the idea of American dominance, American prosperity, American power, American influence. They're still living in that idea. And it's hard when a person has an idea and a belief, it's hard to turn them from that, even as you present facts. So it's going to take an economic collapse. It may take a war that exposes America to be a hollow military power. It may take other nations to just sanction America too, to show you no longer have the sole prerogative to do as you please and to sanction other peoples without ramification. And I believe that all of that is building to a crescendo right now. And especially when you're dealing with China. Again, I go back to something specifically. See, you were being diplomatic about it, but I'm going to tell it like it is. They're talking about we're going to sanction China. Okay, do it. I'm the person. I'm the Nike spokesperson. Let's just do it, and let's see the consequences. What will happen is hyperinflation. What will happen is you will have a self-imposed sanction on you because 93 to 95% of all goods on all shelves in all stores come from China or a subsidiary of China, which means that now you have massive unemployment, massive store closures, shipping shut down, which means you have bank defaults because those companies can't repay the debt that they borrow from the banks, which means you have a economic meltdown, which would bring the empire to a standstill, and people will stampede out of the dollar, causing a flight from the dollar, which will cause a total implosion of the Western world, because the Western world is predicated and based upon dollar domination. So you were being diplomatic about it. I have to put it out there like that. And it's the truth.
But you can't. But Rashid, you can't even sanction China
Right.
without sanctioning the rest of the world. Because look at what they did the past few years. Biden has been talking about so-called friendshoring, which means they're not talking about onshoring. They're talking about friendshoring. So they're forcing the multinationals to shift their supply chains away from China to other countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Mexico, etc. And so what happened is the U.S. direct import from China has declined, but U.S. import from the other countries, Mexico, Vietnam, has going up, and the Chinese trade with Vietnam and Mexico is going way up.
Yeah.
So unless U.S. sanction all the countries in the world, the Chinese goods is going to continue to flow via proxies, and the American consumers just have to pay a premium for that extra transit fee, which is what we're seeing right now. This is why the inflation is going up,
Right.
because now they're doing all these things to distort the trade. They think the people in Washington, they can like file the report. Oh, look, the direct import from China is down. We're doing our job, but they're not living the same world that the average American live in. They probably don't go buy grocery for themselves, the family. They don't see the price tag, pricing. I mean, and anyway, for the daily necessities purchases, which matters a lot for average Americans, that doesn't matter for all these billionaires and millionaires in Congress. For them, it's just a number. So they're not the ones that's being impacted by the sanction that they themselves have put on everyone through. So it's so we don't have we have this like very strange disconnect between the people who make the decisions that impact on everyone else, and then they're not the ones that are suffering the consequences. I think that's the problem. But you are right, because the average Americans, average Europeans are being subjected to intense bombardment of propaganda from birth. So I don't even know if they realize what is going on right now. And I see someone, Diane says, USA can print all the money it needs. It's true. Right now, US can keep on printing money because US dollar is still the world's reserve currency. But again, that's another thing that everything will work until it doesn't.
That's
I
right.
mean, right now, yes, as long as the dollar is the world's reserve currency, that will be fine. But this is why a lot of the country are shifting away from the dollar. This is why people are like BRICS country are calling for dollarization, and this is why Marco Rubio is freaking out. And we're just talking about matter of times here. We're not saying if, we're saying when. When the de-dollarization will reach its final conclusion. I think. I mean, I think it will probably take a little longer. My guess it will probably take. The dollar will probably unwind over the course of a decade, but when that the speed picks up. It's like the snowball rolling down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna get bigger and faster and scarier. It's
Mm-hmm.
gonna be very scary when it reaches the end.
I digress with that view. I believe that it's going to be sooner rather than later, because all of the economic and political and cultural barometers point towards an event of the magnitude of which we've never seen before. And I want to advance something to those of you who are watching real quick. Before I do, I would like for all you all to hit the like button, subscribe if you're not a member. If you're not subscribed, think about becoming a channel member. This is my guy right here. I'm telling you, this is my guy on here. So I want you guys to please hit the like button. But I want to advance something to you. People are talking about when America hits hyperinflation. As you were talking, I just put in hyperinflation. And on one of the pages, it says hyperinflation is a term to describe rapid, excessive, and out of control general price increases in an economy. Now, what do we have? What did you just say you experienced with your son at Carl's Jr.? That was a meal that was $20. I would tell you this: whenever you go to the store, just go and do a price measurement from 5 years ago, when things were $1 and you got a whole lot more, and now you're paying more for less. And then on some things they're cutting. If they used to give you 10 for $1, there is 8 for $1, and then the packages are half the size of what the packages were. That's hyperinflation. They're masking hyperinflation. They will do it until they can't do it anymore. See, it's one thing for the pundits. I call them the scribes, the mouthpiece of the government. These alternatives, some of these alternatives, and most of these mainstream media outlets, they will talk over a little bad news and then they'll wrap it in a whole bunch of good news. They don't want you to realize the reality of the time. And listen, I want everybody to understand this. We are in a time unlike any time that you've ever witnessed in history. America has been the greatest superpower in the last 6,000 years. She's been the wealthiest nation in the last 6,000 years. She's been the most powerful and the most influential nation in the last 6,000 years. Listen, she was so rich that in the 60s and the 70s, to keep prices up, she would take shiploads of goods and sink them out at sea to keep prices up. And now she's begging for the same shiploads of goods that she used to sink so that they can come aboard, so that she can mask inflation. Her dollar is being dropped. As Jim Rogers and Mark Faber says, she's the greatest debtor nation in the history of the world. She's defunded her educational system, which absolutely guarantees a collapse of the republic. Listen to me good. I don't think people understand the severity of this. When you underfund and defund the very institutions that are there to civilize you and to promote different schools of thought and advancement of science and technology, you are absolutely destroying the foundation of the republic. So we're at these moments, in all of these critical moments, where her interest on the debt has reached $1 trillion. She's publicly $33 trillion. 10 years ago, a scholar, a financial scholar, I forget his name, I got the clip on my dashboard. The financial scholar 10 years ago said that the United States debt was $222 trillion 10 years ago. If your economy is a $30 trillion economy, how can this go on in perpetuity? And you're alienating the very nations that fund your budget deficits, and you're antagonizing the one nation that wants to do business with you, that is your largest financer, your largest investor, your largest trade partner, your largest manufacturer, and almost all of your goods come off the shelf. This has the recipe for imperial collapse sooner rather than later. What say you on this?
Amen. Amen. Bring it on. Let's go. I'm ready.
I'm telling you, I mean, Carl, most people, they push it off because, listen, it's hard to fathom America not being the number one power. It's hard to fathom that America not being the number one economy or the number one military power. But look at this. Look at the miracle. And I'm not just saying this because it's China. I'm just saying, look at these things. In 40 years, China implemented these 5-year programs, took that nation from the poorest country on the planet. Look at China today. Look at the program they instituted years ago, where they, in I think a year ago or 2 years ago, it was announced that they took 850 million people from poverty to the middle class. That is the entire population of Europe and part of the United States. They took from poverty to the middle class. Now let us flip it. Growing unemployment in the United States, growing unemployment in Europe. Higher prices for food and commodities in Europe, higher prices of food and commodity in the United States. Deficit spending in Europe, deficit spending in the United States. A declining standard of living in Europe, a declining standard of living in the United States. Antagonization of their finances in Europe, the same in the United States. The desperation and the push for war with the United States because she sees her position crumbling. Europe is right along with her. The growing deficits, the growing debt, private and public. How can this continue on? There is math. Listen, if you are a math student, it is a mathematical impossibility for this to continue on. And it's a mathematical impossibility for this to go on 15 years. Because think about this, Carl. If you made $30,000 a year, just put it 30,000, and you spent $1 million a year, and you spent $1 million a year for 60 years, and you only made $30,000 a year, do you believe that you'll be able to spend $1 million a year every year? Now your interest on your money, the money that you owe, is over $1 million a year, but you're still making $30,000 a year. How in the world is that mathematically feasible to you or I? And if it's not feasible for you and I to live like that, then how can a government or a nation live like that?
I just want to say, I wish somebody extend $1 million credit line to me. It's like, this is not available to common people, you know, like for the average people making $30,000 a year, that's just not a reality. Nobody's going to lend you $1 million except, you know, United States, because US has built up its wealth in the past. That's why, you know, people continue to put their trust in this IOU called the US dollars. But at some point, they're gonna collect. And this is why this is why US they want to block the Chinese investment into United States, because the Chinese are saying, okay, we have all these dollars. What are we gonna do with these dollars? Maybe we can buy U.S. asset, like a real value. And that's when the people in Congress like, no. Those are supposed to be paper IOUs. You can't cash them in. And so yeah. I mean, we're man. I like, this is gonna end badly. When that all house of cards falling down, it's going to end badly for, for many people. And this is going to, I mean, like, if we don't have revolution now, we're definitely gonna have a revolution then, because we're just gonna have a social class.
Well, Carl, I want to advance another thought. When the world went off the gold and silver standard in 1971, I advanced that the financial doom of America and England and America was sealed. London, the London Gold Exchange. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but a few years ago, the U.S. and the U.K. were caught trying to settle debt in tungsten, and they tried to blame it on the Chinese. And then when the people retraced the gold, it came back to New York and London. And a lot of people don't understand that. Now, I liken 1971 to the year that the snake's head was cut off. If you cut a snake's head off for upwards of 3 hours, the body can still contort, the muscles still move. But eventually rigor mortis sets in. We're in that economic time right now. Economic rigor mortis is setting in on the US dominated, the UK dominated global financial system. And guess what? The jig is up, because the gold has transferred from west to east, and China has huge amounts of it. I want to play something for you, and then I want your assessment on. I played this before, and it's talking about the reality of the gold. And this was 2 years ago. This I believe it was 2 years that this clip came out, and this was about China's true holdings of gold, not what the government just comes out and say, oh, we only have 2,000 tons of gold or something. But this was an appraisal, and I remember Peter Schiff, and I remember Mark Faber, and I remember a few other pundits were talking about that China had huge amounts of gold that it was not mentioning, and that they were preparing to cover themselves just in case the United States, and this was before Russia money was stolen in the Western system, that China was prepared to cover their losses in case of a Western financial collapse or a dollar collapse. Someone told me this years ago, and as the years sped up and I started seeing the situation, I said, oh, now it's starting to make sense. So now with the theft of $650 billion from Russia, this clip right here makes more sense. I want you to listen to this. This is it talks about China's gold holdings. So we're going to play it real quick.
Gold is some useless, inert asset, right, whose heyday was in the 19th century, as irrelevant to modern finance as the horse is to transport. Maybe not. Today we return to a favourite theme of ours, and once I haven't looked at since probably 2019, and that is, how much gold does China have? And for those with short attention spans who don't want to watch to the end of this video, I'll cut straight to the chase. China has much more gold than it says it does. In fact, it has more gold than the US. Its enormous gold hoards are all part of its grand global reserve currency status designs. Right, now time to back up those assertions. Let's do an audit. Audits involve a lot of numbers, and too many numbers can get a little overwhelming, so I'm going to try and keep these numbers to a mentally digestible minimum. But let me start with perhaps the most important contextual figure and anchor that in your minds, and that is US gold holdings. Official records show that the United States owns some 8,133 tons, most of it in Fort Knox. Although I should say that gold in Fort Knox hasn't been audited for 50 years. The US is the world's largest gold owner, or so you would have thought, and gold comprises 77% of United States foreign exchange reserves. China's officially declared holdings are 1,948 tons, so about a bit less than a quarter of the US, and that makes up just 3% of its $3.2 trillion of foreign exchange holdings. The real number is, of course, much higher than that. China has been the world's largest gold producer since 2007. This past decade, it has produced about 15% of all the gold mined in the world. Last year, it produced 380 tons, which is about 20% more than the world's second largest producer, Australia. And since 2000, China has mined roughly 6,500 tons of gold, and more than half of Chinese gold production is state-owned. China National Gold Corporation alone accounts for 20%. So already, just on Chinese gold production alone, that official 1,948 ton figure looks doubtful. Crucially, China keeps all of the gold it mines. Exporting domestic gold production is not allowed. And with reserves in decline at home, Chinese mining companies have also been buying assets abroad, across Africa, South America and Asia. And international production exceeded domestic production by about 15 tons last year. But as well as being the world's biggest producer, China is also the world's biggest importer of gold. It's hard to get precise import figures, but we do know that, for example, via Hong Kong alone, over 6,000 tons has entered the country since 2000. So if you add that to cumulative gold production since 2000, you get a figure of 13,200 tonnes. Whether imported, mined or recycled, most of the gold that enters China goes through the Shanghai Gold Exchange, the SGE, including the gold imported from Hong Kong. So SGE withdrawals, for which we do have numbers, can act as something of an approximation for demand. And it is possible to get numbers for SGE withdrawals. Since 2008, roughly 20,000 tonnes have been withdrawn from the SGE. Then we have to add in all the gold held in China, whether as bullion or jewellery, prior to 2000. And the World Gold Council estimates a figure of 2,500 tonnes in privately held jewellery. If you add domestic mining and official reserves, you arrive at a figure of about 4,000 tonnes. Now, Nick Laird of Gold Charts Are Us, one of the world's leading gold data experts, has cobbled it all together to produce this chart, which shows cumulative gold held in China to be around 28,911 tonnes. I've spoken to numerous analysts, Ross Norman, Bron Suchetsky, formerly of the Perth Mint, Koos Janssen, and they all arrive at similar estimates. In addition, there is gold entering China that is not accounted for by SGE withdrawals. Ross Norman points out that the People's Bank of China, the PBOC, likes to buy 12.5 kilo gold bars. They don't trade on the SGE. Also, the PBOC often uses dollars on exchanges in London, Dubai and Switzerland, while the SGE sells its gold in yuan. The army too owns gold and doesn't have to declare its purchases. Remember, there are many state agencies on top of the army and the central bank which buy gold. There's the State Administration of Foreign Exchange and China Investment Corporation, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, to give you two examples. So how much of all that huge hoard is state-owned? 40%? 50%? 60%? But at 50%, the implication is that China owns roughly 14,500 tonnes. That is 1.8 times more than the US. Now, it may be that only 20 or 30% of that gold is state-owned. I find that unlikely, but even if that's the case, it still owns more than the US. And China has been famously encouraging its citizens to buy gold since 2008. And the SGE has actually stated that only consumers buy gold over exchange, but it almost doesn't matter. This encouragement to buy gold, as one of my readers resident in China reported to me, kicked off a frenzy of laundry as China's citizens rushed to exchange the hordes of hooky cash they'd built up. In his local bank in Shanghai, he said, in 2009, he was standing behind a Chinese bloke who was unlocking bundles of euros, US dollars, Singapore dollars, Swiss francs in exchange for 5 kilo gold bars across the counter. Gold ownership in China is registered, so the government knows how much its citizens have. But it's commonly thought that should Beijing invite private holders of gold to support a major government currency initiative by pledging their gold as a kind of war bond, then there would be a 99% pickup. The vast majority of Chinese trust their government, especially when it comes to returning China to the top of the world. And that means a considerable amount of extra gold can very quickly be mobilized to participate in whatever Beijing is planning. Chinese gold holders don't have the same mistrust of government held by Western gold bugs. The party's seen as a good housewife to the nation. But the disruption it would cause means there's no way China can declare such large official holdings, not yet anyway. There'd be an unwanted surge in both the yuan and the gold price. The government's $3.2 trillion of US dollar foreign exchange reserves would be devalued. And to declare that much gold would be a direct challenge to American supremacy, which China is, I don't think, yet ready for. Parity first, then supremacy. So for now, they follow Deng Xiaoping's doctrine of we must not shine too brightly until everything is ready. President Trump wrong-footed the Chinese, and that and COVID, the great accelerator, may have brought schedules forward. The Chinese President Xi Jinping is known as a man of destiny, and he may want the great ascension to happen on his watch. But backing its money, if only in part with gold, as empires on the rise are wont to do, would give China great credibility in a world awash with money printing.
He talked about the level of gold reserves that the Chinese have, and I was looking at something in the chat, and let me pull it up on the screen real quick. The chat is going quick. Jenny BN says this, and this will answer this right now. The U.S. will just seize all the assets of Chinese investors. See, this is what we were talking about before. China was preparing for that. That's why I believe China set up the Shanghai Gold Exchange and all of these other very vital organizations that they were levers of economic freedom, just in case the West tried to do to them what they were doing to everybody else who challenged the West. So I don't think that they could seize Chinese assets because China has, well, the United States would be killing itself. It would be putting all bullets in the chamber and blowing its own head out, because if it seized Chinese assets, the Chinese would then be justified openly to sanction and embargo the United States. And think about if China embargoed the United States within 2 weeks, according to most people, that all of the shelves on the stores in America would be practically empty. That would be suicide. And before you comment, I want to just bring up something real quick. There's an article from Grayers. He's an investor and he's on King World News. And this came out April 22nd, 2019. And the title of it is Grayers: China's gold holdings exceed 30,000 tons. Now, my thoughts are, now I'm thinking about what they're saying, that China realized what the United States did to Japan when Japan was on the rise economically. China saw what the United States did with all of its competitors. So what China did was put in things like the BRICS Bank, the AAIB Bank, the Shanghai Gold Exchange, all of these other things, and then started quietly acquiring tangible assets, the owning of companies, the owning of non-Western companies, the owning of mines, and all of these tangible things, gold and silver. They have copper reserves. They have, all of these things that the West takes for granted. China has built up national strategic reserves, like the United States has a strategic oil reserves. China has strategic reserves of all of these critical things that are needed to keep an economy going. So I don't think that they would be able to seize the Chinese assets. And if so, I believe that China has this bet with the gold that say, okay, you want to play a game? Now I can shoot the dollar in the foot and just kill it. I can just kill the dollar by announcing to the world that we do have X amount of gold, and we'll be backing the yuan with gold and oil. You can buy oil in Chinese yuan now. A lot of people don't know that. So I believe that this was to minimize the losses when the time came for a stampede out of the U.S. dollar. What do you say about that?
That's a good point. I was watching the documentary you show. I think it's legit because, like he pointed out, it's true. China is the world's largest gold producer, and China doesn't export gold. And China has to. People have to remember, China had to build up its gold reserve from zero, because in 1949, when the Chinese Civil War was wrapping up after the communist victory on mainland China, Chiang Kai-shek's government, the nationalist government, they took all the gold reserve from banks of Shanghai. They took it with them to Taiwan. So in 1949, China had no gold reserve. So they had to slowly build that up from zero. But it's helped by the fact that there's a lot of gold mines in China. China has all traditionally been world's largest gold producer. And by not exporting, they're slowly accumulating gold. And as when China started to accumulate large piles of dollars, they have to reach a realization that, okay, these are just paper. These are just paper IOUs. So when they try, so they have tried to cash in, by investing U.S. assets. But this is where there's a huge freak out in the Congress. They say, "Oh no, communist CCP influence the United States. They're buying up everything. We must stop them." So China has been divesting from the United States. Talking about U.S. seizing Chinese assets. Well, the Chinese investors are smarter than that. They're running ahead of the game. So they have been slowly there was a point Tencent was investing in Top Gun sequel. The Top Gun Maverick was originally financed by Tencent until there's like a big uproar on like Reddit and the U.S. Congress, and then so they were forced to pull out. And same thing with AMC. Well, I actually just went to watch a Chinese movie in an AMC theater near my parents' house because after the Chinese company Wanda purchased AMC back in 2012, and after that, the AMC started showing Chinese movies in areas with large Chinese population. But I just look it up, like just 2 years ago, 2021, the owner of Wanda sold most of his stocks in AMC. He cashed out, and so the Chinese investors are now waiting for the U.S. government to seize their asset. They are cashing out. They are divesting away from the United States. They're investing in places like Brazil. They're investing in places like South Africa. This is why there's a BRICS grouping. And they realize that when they invest in the U.S. asset, there's a good chance now that U.S. government is going to say, "Oh, sorry, this is all mine now." And so they don't want any of that. They don't want it. So the divestment from United States is already happening. The decoupling is already happening because China realized U.S. is not a reliable partner. So they are divesting, they're decoupling from U.S. to build a safety. And so yeah, I don't think they see what U.S. is doing to Russia, and they understand same thing can be applied to China as well. That's how U.S. sanction works. The sanction never goes away. U.S. will only pile sanctions on top of existing sanctions. And all the sanction regimes that U.S. first developed against North Korea, and Iran, and they apply the same laws now against Russia. Now there's already talks. There's already talks in U.S. among those think tankers about applying those same laws, sanction laws, to China in case of a war breakout over Taiwan. So these guys are already thinking that, and of course, Chinese, they're not stupid, man. When you openly talk about stuff like that, they are making contingency plans. At the end of the day, China is the one that have production capacity. They have friends all over the world that produce energies and raw commodities. So they're not worried about being cut off from the United States. U.S. is important in the sense that it's one of the big consumer market of Chinese goods, but there's a conceit in the U.S. that China need us to be consumer of their goods. It's like, no, they don't. They don't need you to buy their television. They can sell their television to somebody else. They can buy television themselves. Nobody needs you to buy stuff from them. It's ridiculous. What you're paying with a paper IOU. That's increasingly useless. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
And I want to play this little short clip. I played it before, but I want to refresh a lot of people's memories since we're on this situation of sanctions and what the United States has done to Russia and is trying to put it on repeat with the Chinese. This is about 43 seconds. So everybody, please hit the like button and subscribe. But let me play this clip real quick.
China would be even a bigger nightmare for the West, because look at China's standing as a socialist country, as a country that offers so much aid to other countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America. It's an entirely different ballgame. And, if the United States tries to use Taiwan as a pawn against China, their defeat on that issue, I'm not talking militarily at this time, but politically, will be much more resounding than their impending defeat of the using Ukraine as a pawn against Russia.
And we see that because, like, this is not to take anything away from Russia, but the Chinese financial standing, it is the largest holders of currency reserves. It's the largest investor in the world. It has the largest gold reserves in the world, and it is the largest trade partner to practically the entire world. So I'm trying to understand what senator, what congressman, what leader think that it is a smart idea to sanction the very nation that produces the combat boots, the fatigues, the flags, the lapels, everything that goes into the military, the motherboards, the chips for the missiles, everything. I mean, isn't that insanity? That's lunacy, isn't it?
Well, Rashid, you have to remember most our politicians like Mitch McConnell, Feinstein, Biden. These guys are born in the last, in the middle. They're in the middle of the last century. Their best time was like back in 1960s. That was probably their peak. 1960s, 1970s. That's a world they remember. They remember like the peak of American power. But they right now they're half the time they don't know where they are. I don't expect them to realize the reality of 2023 because I don't think I honestly don't think they understand the situation United States in right now. Vis-a-vis China, because in their mind, China was still probably this isolated a country, back in the Cold War. This is why a lot of them think they can wage Cold War 2.0 and still win, which is crazy. Like, if anything, waging Cold War 2.0, they will just be isolating United States, and then they will force their European allies to go along with the isolation, and that will just end up strangling their own economy. So, it's and you talk about like United States defunding education. You would think that this would not affect the most elite segment of the population, right? Because
I know where you're going.
Because right now it looks like the dumbing down of America is all across the board. It applies to everyone, and if you just take a look and listen to your congressman, listen to your politicians, you will know what I'm talking about. These people are dumb. I mean, okay, these people are very smart when it comes to line up their own pocket, when it comes to corruption, when it comes to grip, but comes to everything else, they're just dumb. And like, you cannot run an empire on these very limited human resources. I mean, it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. And Jenny BN says again, she's talking about Chinese businesses in the U.S. and the Chinese own a lot of U.S. land in the U.S. But also, Jenny, and I'm going to say this, then I'll let Carl chime in, because I don't know who it was meant for. But you have to understand, most U.S. corporations are invested in China also. So what's good for the goose can be good for the gander also. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the U.S. corporations, they don't want a Cold War. They are making money hand over fist. Apple, China is not only where 90% of the iPhone is made, but China is also a large market. Actually, Apple benefited. Well, maybe Apple is a bad example, because Apple actually benefited from U.S. sanction on Huawei. Because when U.S. sanction on Huawei, Apple market share went up in China, because now because Huawei's 5G phone almost got killed. So a lot of the Chinese consumers ended up switching to Apple. But now that's changed. Now Huawei is coming up with their own chip, with their own phone. People are now also boosted by patriotism because they see what United States is doing to Huawei. They're buying. They rather buy Huawei than Apple. So, but most of the U.S. companies, this is why Elon Musk is in travel to China all the time. Because not only because he has a Shanghai Gigafactory, but also China is a big market. It's a big market for them. GM make more cars in China than they make in the United States. The market, like I remember in 2008, during the financial crisis, I traveled to China, and one of my dad's friend's daughter was working in GM China, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't know what they're doing in the GM in US, man. Like we are the one making money. We don't have to be bankrupt. I don't know why they're losing money in America, but we're making money hand over fist here in China." That's also starting to change because when Chinese domestic brand is now starting to be competitive. But for a long time, the China is a place for the U.S. multinationals to make money. They're still opening Starbucks, KFC to China, KFC is every corner, and tell you what, the Chinese KFC tastes better than KFC. This is just sad. Like it's not just China. I lived in Bali, Bali, Indonesia. McDonald's and Burger King taste better in Bali than United States. Coca-Cola tastes better outside the United States because they actually use real sugar. They use cane sugar than the high fructose syrup, corn syrup crap that we get over here. Like my wife when I brought her here and she wanted to taste the American Coca-Cola. I'm like, no, man, that's a bad idea. You will not like it. And she's like, no, I just want to try. And so when we went to the movie theater, I got her a huge the jumbo size, and she's like, oh my god, what is this crap? How do you guys drink this?
Yeah, everything is like this with me. Let me just say it like this. I continue to tell everybody that all of these things, minute as they may be, are signs of a declining empire. There are signs of a declining republic and culture. Remember when people took pride in what they had, what they owned, what they built, what they made? Now it's all about profit. It's all about divide and conquer. It's all about, let me see how I can get over on the next man or woman. And I'll do any and everything to do that. And look where it has gotten the Republic of America. Look where it's gotten the Western world. It may have benefited for a little bit, and it may have benefited the top tier, but now the ramifications and the repercussions of those greedy, racist, fascist policies are now destroying the very fabric of America and the Western world. What say you on that matter?
Oh, definitely. I actually interviewed Peter Turchin, one of the social scientists who has been studying the collapse of societies from the antiquity to the present. And according to his prediction model, United States is entering what he calls a revolutionary phase in the 2020s. We are in this decade of ferment right now. Like we actually start to see that with like Trump presidency, and now it's just the cycle is just continuing. I mean, look at Biden. He's not quite there, and look at the coming election. We're getting Biden versus Trump again. The people talk about how U.S. is a great democracy. This is a choice we have, folks. You either get Biden or you either get Trump. Two terms in a row. This is all you're getting. Yeah, I mean, Holly says that Russia was prepared, China will be ready. I agree, definitely. I mean, China has been preparing for this for a long, long time.
And I believe that the leaders of the Western world, they are so out of touch and out of tune with reality, and so out of touch with the average person that they actually believe the garbage that they peddle to everybody. They really believe that stuff because, believe a person when they show you who they are. Don't believe them how you think that they are. Believe them as they show you who they are. If someone is constantly doing something over and over again, as I posed on one of my questions on one of my shows, I said, if this person went from this neighborhood to that neighborhood to that neighborhood to that neighborhood, and every time they were in that neighborhood, they either caused a fight or they were raping or robbing, that's who that person is, right? Well, look at the policy initiatives from administration to administration. It doesn't matter who's the president. The system itself is corrupt, racist, fascist, and will do any and everything to maintain its power. And those who claim to want to come to power to change it, I ask this question: do they change the system, or does the system change them? Because when we look at it, we see the same policies. Look, what was implemented by Obama, and how he.
I voted for him. I voted for him to 2008. I thought he was a real deal. I believe in the change. And after that, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this crap. Like every politician is the same. It doesn't matter.
Every one of them.
Every one of them.
And Obama, and let me tell you, a lot of people don't like to hear this, but I got to tell you, he used his color to get to office and exploit black, brown, red, yellow, and poor whites. That's what he did. The people that are pulling the strings behind the scene knew that the system was close to imploding, so they wanted to give a fresh look and some semblance of hope so that you can still believe in the system. And look from the policies that he enacted to the policies that were enacted after him, all the way up to right now, and show me where they have deviated much. And they haven't. So we're looking, I'm telling you, every last one of them believe this mess.
Obama is a black face of the white establishment in America. I mean, he did. I have to give it to him. He pulled it off. It off, and he fooled a lot of people, including myself included. But like after Obama, what I realized is it's all a shame. It's all a shame. It's like I don't believe anything what any of these politicians say anymore. It's all, nothing ever changes. They always promise change, but when they come to power, it's more of the same. And this is the truth of America. They say it's a democracy, it's freedom. No, you have freedom to choose between Obama or you have the freedom to choose between Biden or Trump. That is your freedom. That's all the freedom you're getting.
and the system will not, even if you think that Trump is a lot different, the system will only allow him to go so far out of it before they reel him back in. What I'm saying to you is that the system and those dark powers, as Putin said it real nice, and I'm gonna paraphrase it and I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but he said, each president that comes to power, they come with all of these ideas and they come with all of these promises until they get elected. And these men in black suit come in and tell them what you can and can't do. And that's pretty much, that's the sum of it. That sums up the entire U.S. political system. It is a farce. And listen, as the economy deteriorates more, and as America's military power deteriorates more, and as her political and economic influence deteriorate globally, you're going to see a system exposed because it's going to start eating at itself. It's already doing that. Look what happened on January 6th with this. Look what's happening now across America. There's a racial divide, a cultural divide, an economic divide. All of that stuff is growing exponentially because the system can no longer, I call it Walt Disney. You know, Walt Disney is this imaginary made up thing, and the system can only focus on so many things, and so they can't focus on this wonderful Walt Disney world of America's the greatest, America's the richest. We are unified. All of that is falling apart at the seams because the system is being taxed on every level, and it is falling apart. What say you on that?
No, 100% agreement. I mean, like right now, it's sad because a lot of the U.S. public is kind of raised with U.S. number one as almost built in as their part of the identity. That's why they get very defensive when you tell them U.S. is not number one anymore. They're trying to say no, like China is going to collapse anytime, and this is why like people like Peter Zihan has a huge following because he tells them what they want to believe. He sells the copium, copium and hopium, and but good for him. He's getting a good grift going. He recognized what makes money. I can't begrudge a man of his hustle. But the whole system is not well. Is not well. We all know it. We live in it. We live in it long enough to figure out it's a scam, it's a sham, and I just can't wait. I just can't wait for the whole edifice to come down to collapse.
And it's gonna be something. I was talking to Gregory Manarino. He's an investor. Yeah, and he has his own podcast, and I think he has 200 or 300,000 subscribers. He was I think a captain in the U.S. Navy, if I'm not mistaken, either a lieutenant or a captain. And he does this investing, and he's been warning people. He said, when this thing collapses, it will cause the loss of life on a biblical scale. He said, because this will be more deadly than a nuclear exchange, because so many people are wrapped up in this idea of Western and U.S. supremacy. And when the dollar and the euro and the pound is no longer that currency, and they can't buy, or they can't go to that store, they can't go down, and hunger sets in. It's one thing for hunger to set in on you. It's another thing for hunger to set in on your children. And you have no way to get this. It's going to start people robbing and killing and all of this stuff, and the government is going to be so factionalized and so focused on trying to put up a facade that everything will be all right, that we may be even looking at Mad Max type dealings here in America, because there will be war. I'm telling you. And he was talking about this, and it's a sombering and sobering picture that most Americans and most Western people refuse to acknowledge. It's not that they never heard it before, it's that they believe that it is unreal. I was talking to a family friend one day, and I was pointing out to him, this was a few years ago, and if my mom is watching, she knows, hey mom, I love you. But we were all standing out in her yard, and we were talking and laughing, and so I was telling the person, I said, listen, you better prepare yourself for the days when it'll be lean, because we're heading down a path of total implosion. I said, America won't be the number one. She won't have the privilege that she used to enjoy, and this will cause revolution. And I said, when the dollar collapses, this will change everything, because most people know it's dollar supremacy. And immediately I was cut off. He said, what do you mean the dollar collapsed? The dollar will never collapse. America, we're too strong for this. This is what the guy told me. I mean, he was in my face telling me. They get offended from when you tell them something outside of their comfort zone. And you're trying to warn them of an impending collapse or an impending fire that's right over the cliff here that is headed toward your home, but they can't see the forest for the trees, because they've been so indoctrinated to America must lead, America exceptionalism, America's first. Why can't there be an equal playing field? How come America can't be one amongst equals? Why does she have to always impose her will, her way, her policies, her laws, her extraterritorial laws, I might add? The people are indoctrinated. I believe they are all drunk off of American imperialism. What say you on the matter?
I think America is stuck in the denial phase of the 5-step grieving process. The declining empire. I think in the deep of their heart, they actually know it's true. This whole thing is going down. The U.S. is on the declining path, but they refuse to believe it, because to believe it will kind of shake the foundation of what they have believed in all their life, and they can't have that. It's almost like a religion, right? America number one is almost a religion. If you attack somebody's religion, you attack somebody's identity, they get like offended, they get defensive. So like, oh, whoa, like, no, the Earth is flat, like you can't tell me otherwise. And but well, Diane says exciting time to be alive. Yeah, we're definitely living the interesting times right now, Diane. And
what we were just talking about. Go ahead.
This is why I am choosing to decamp and move into Indonesia. I'm only gonna be here for a couple months, folks. I'm just here to visit my folks, making sure they're okay. But after 2 months, after I do my filial duties to my parents, I'm out of here. I'm out.
Putin's shirt, he was talking about the quote, I guess, that we were talking about with him, and this is what he said. That's what Putin just said at an EF presser. He said it doesn't matter who wins the U.S. elections, the same agenda will continue. See, we're not lying. We're telling you the truth. There's proof of it right there. Yeah. So, Carl, I mean, we know that there will be hell to pay for a dollar collapse. We know that there's going to be hell to pay for the economic collapse, but a lot of people don't know that Britain or the UK's financial wherewithal is tied right to the United States. The pound and the dollar are tied together. That's why you have the London Gold Exchange tied with the New York Stock Exchange and Gold Exchange. That's why when you see one at war, you see the other at war. So with the UK being a smaller version of the United States, what do you think will be going on when that dollar finally collapses? Because we know that the UK is not a military power globally anymore. What do you think the ramifications of the dollar collapse and America's position being broken globally, what do you think that would do to the UK?
Well, actually, I think all those vassal states of United States empire will suffer first. I mean, we see Europe is in pain right now. They're getting cut off on the cheap Russian gas, and they're being pressured by US to decouple from China. So all the German industrialists, they are moving their factories to United States, where at least they can get cheap energy. And so US is essentially cannibalizing its allies in order to sustain itself, and so Europe is gonna suffer first. But at the same time, when the shit hits the fan, Europe always have an option to switch sides. That's just the truth. I mean, like the vassal states will stick with the mafia boss when he's a mafia boss. When the mafia dong is like down on his luck, nobody's gonna stick around. Like there's no loyalty. I mean, like why U.S. is holding the system together by coercive force. Once that coercive force is not being funded anymore, because the U.S. military power rests on the dollar hegemony. Somebody posted like a meme on Twitter, with the U.S. 7th Fleet, all these aircraft carriers sailing the oceans. They say, oh, this is what backs the U.S. dollar. But guess what? The U.S. military hard power is also backed by the U.S. dollar. It's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. You can say, oh yeah, dollar is backed by the U.S. military hard power, but guess what? U.S. military hard power is backed by the dollar. So once that the dollar goes down, you are not going to be able to fund all that military hard power anymore. And especially when you don't even have industry. In China they have like 13 shipyards to United States 7 shipyards, and just one of China's shipyard, the Jiangnan shipyard outside of Shanghai, is bigger than all of United States shipyard. So they have the capacity. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think that U.S. will win a conventional war against China, because they can just outproduce you. They have the population, they have the industrial capacity. I mean,
The finances.
You just have IOU. You just have a printing machine. And it's like that printing machine is no good in time for war. They're not gonna. China is not gonna take dollar payment when you're waging war on them. I mean,
Right.
like, so.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but what do you, Carl? What do you think on this situation? I'm glad you brought that up, because if war breaks out, I believe that the United States. I know it sounds crazy, but I believe that they're trying to choose the best of bad choices. If you understand what I'm saying, they see the handwriting on the wall, and what they're believing. Well, maybe all of our war gaming showed us that we can't beat China in the Asia Pacific, but they show us that the longer we wait, the worse it'll be for us. So let us just choose. Maybe we can throw a Hail Mary and catch the ball in the end zone and beat the Chinese. Maybe we can do that. Don't you think? Because it seems that way that they're trying to choose the best of bad policies.
That is a gamble that played by the Japanese Imperial Army in 1941. I mean, that's what they thought. They thought, okay, well, United States is big industrial giant, but if we don't, beat them now, we're never gonna beat them. So we might as well, we do this Pearl Harbor thing. Maybe we'll even the odds a little bit. I mean, but this is the exact same line of thinking that got Japan defeated, its city pulverized and nuked, and this is, I mean, why would the United States they think things will turn out differently? I mean, this is really, I mean, okay. Oh, well, I know why, because they're not only full of hubris, but they're also dumb. Most of our policy decision makers are dumb. I don't think I think they're still going to try to do Cold War first before the hot war. They're still going to try to do Cold War 2.0 to see if they're going to cause the China to collapse like Soviet Union. I think it's going to take them 5-10 years to figure out that won't work, and hopefully by that time it will be too late for US to change tack, because I think give it 5-10 years. China will be a position where like it will be kind of like unstoppable, even if US want to militarily constrain China. This is my take.
I think that desperation, as what is Gerald Celente used to say, and he often says, when people lose everything, they lose it. And I believe that is the case with the U.S. elite. They see the handwriting on the wall, and they see that the empire is losing out, and not just losing out, but losing bad. We're no longer the number one economy. We're no longer the number one investor. We're no longer the number one trade partner to the world. We're no longer the number one manufacturer or builder. All of that has been usurped by China. Not only is that, China is now, they no longer have antiquated armed forces. They have a fighting force of ground forces. They have the largest navy. A year and a half, they're going to have the largest air force. So now they're going to have 3 of the largest portions of military fighting capacity. I believe that they feel that they're losing everything, and this causes them to be detached from reality, and it causes them to lose it. What say you?
But see, the thing is, Rashid, like US can be number 2 or even number 3 and still have a very rich, very developed economy. So what they really fighting not to give up is hegemony.
That's right.
Because they have to be number 1. They have to be on top of the world, telling everybody what to do, force everybody to run according to their own ideas. But this is what drives them crazy. But the craziest part is that doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
United States can still be a very rich and prosperous country if you just accept that it's one among it's one among equals, and trade, just trade with people, and not demanding everybody to bend their knee to their idea of U.S. hegemony, because that's what breeds resentment. That's why there's BRICS. That's why there's de-dollarization, because the U.S. is doing everything possible right now to alienate everybody, so whatever they do is gonna make the matter just even worse. I mean, they're gonna lose the hegemony even faster. However tightly they're trying to cleaning onto it. Yeah, that's my rant. Sorry.
No, you're right on the money. Everybody in the chat, if you have anything that you want Carl to directly address, put it in the chat before we go off the air. Please do it. He has a family. We've had Carl on here for almost 2 hours, so please put your question or your comment in the chat real quick, and I'll try to put it up. Oh, thank you too. I got to put this up there. You guys are amazing. We appreciate that.
Thank you, kid.
So gotta go feed the water machine. Let's see. Do you have anyone? I know. We'll give it a second because it may take a little bit to type. I know I'm not the most proficient typer, so we'll see if they have any questions or any statements or anything, any issues that they want you to address before we let you get out of here, man. Because I'm telling you, kick butt, Carl. That's why I have to have you on my show a lot, man. I love your perspective, and not just on the Asia Pacific perspective, but your knowledge globally on the geopolitical outlook on things. I love that. And then I love to let you go free so that you can get it told to everybody.
Well, thank you, Rashid. I mean, I love talking to you too, because you get it. You get it. Like I don't have to explain. We are on the same wavelength here.
All right, Ken. I'm butchering your name, Ken Chow. He says, Carl, what roads you think West will take?
Well, I think the West will go kick and screaming to the inevitable conclusion that whatever they're doing is not going to work. I think, like I said, right now the West is still in the denial phase of the 5-step grieving process. So my hope is in the next 5 to 10 years, they move beyond denials. For the past decade or two, we're stuck. That's a place where we're stuck. We're stuck in denial. We never move forward. And my hope is we eventually move to complete this grieving process, to finally come to acceptance that the U.S. hegemony is not sustainable, and it's time to give it up, to give up the ghost. And actually, what are your thoughts on Vietnam buying F-16s? Vietnam have not verified, so it might be U.S. lying again. So, I first of all, I don't think there's going to be a conflict between China and Vietnam, even over South China Seas. China and Vietnam has its own disagreement, but they have the disagreement forever. It's not something that F-16, a couple dozen F-16 is going to change the equation, because China and Vietnam has a very important trade relationship, and so that U.S. selling F-16 to Vietnam just means U.S. defense industry are getting extra dollars. Vietnam is getting some F-16s, but it fundamentally doesn't change anything. It's just like, even if NATO sends F-16 to Ukraine, like they have been saying for a month, it's not going to change anything. I mean, that's an actual war situation. The F-16, China and Russia, they have 5th generation fighter planes, right? And the F-16, they're good planes, but they're no match for the 5th generation fighter planes. They won't even see the 5th generation fighter planes coming, and they will be shot down out of the sky by missiles. So this is so F-16s. It's nice back in the age of Top Gun, the first Top Gun movie. Now we're in I watched the Top Gun second Top Gun movie, Maverick, on the flight over here, because it's a long flight, and it's just pretty ridiculous. It's a very contrived scenario. I mean, they're basically saying they're waging war on Russia. I mean, it's pretty thinly disguised. They're talking about this country with doing nuclear refinement, but they possess 5th generation fighter. You're like, wait. There's only two other countries that have fifth generation fighters. That's either China or Russia. Which one are you going war against? And they have all this snow, like so I guess they mean this Russia, and it's crazy, and the whole premise is so crazy. It's like, why would you go bomb a nuclear facility in Russia? It's not a question of whether you could do it. It's a question is why would you do that? And that would that's going to lead to a big conflict. And this is how the propaganda is sold to us. They never want us to ask the question why, but like, oh, we could do it. Look at our fancy jet and our fancy maneuvers. And he also tried to portray U.S. as an underdog, right? Like, we have to fly like outdated F-18 planes. Yes, that's true. Right now, U.S. will be underdog. They will be using outdated planes. But you won't play out like Hollywood, unfortunately. Will the U.S. commit to total suicide? I mean, the U.S. is committing suicide right now. I mean, it's not like nobody is stopping those politicians in Washington. Other policies is leading this country to further down the hole that they dig themselves into. So I mean, like, nobody believes. No, okay, I don't think even them, because they're so disconnected from reality, they don't actually believe they're committing suicide. Like Rashid said, they start believing their own propaganda. When you drink your own Kool-Aid, they're too far gone. These people, it's we are just. I'm just here to as an observer. Like a space alien hovering over the continent and see what are these crazy humans doing to themselves. How do you see India looking like in the near future as far as superpower concerned? Will India be the biggest? So India actually enjoys a very unique geopolitical situation, because right now India is being wooed by all the powers on all sides. India is part of the BRICS, but on the other hand, India is in the Quad. So U.S. wants India to be in the anti-China alliance. But the recent the India-Canadian row, I think that exposed a big rift in it's a mentality. It's a mentality. It's like U.S. could just accept India's position as a independent a great power and try to work with it. That might have made the partnership work. But U.S. don't like partners. They want vassal states. They want people who unquestionably follow U.S. policy in everything. This is why when India chose not to go like all totally against Russia, because India has a traditional friendship with first Soviet Union, and Russia, India get most of its armament from Russia. And they're getting most of their energy from Russia. There's no reason for them to go against their own self-interest to sanction Russia. And when that happen, U.S. is trying to light a fire, trying to put the Indian over the fire a little bit through their proxy Canada. But this is gonna backfire because like India right now, they could have decide to sit on the sideline or they can straddle the fence, so to speak, and get the best from both sides. But U.S. is saying no, you can't do that. You can't. I understand your hustle. You have to be unquestionably our vassal and pledge your allegiance and bend your knee. I don't think India is going to do that. So we're going to have to see how this fallout coming out of the India-Canada row that's playing out right now. But I think India will continue to stick to its gun to play an independent foreign policy. But as far as India itself, its development, I mean, India has a lot of potential. It's a world's largest population. Its population has surpassed China, but India lags behind in infrastructure, public education, and so India has a lot of work to do. Whether India can accomplish what China did in the last 40 years, that remains to be seen. I mean, because to be honest, India would need major reforms, both economic, social, and political, structural reform to kind of make that big strides that China did. It took China a revolution, a civil war, and a revolution to kind of clean the house, and then to build things to the ground. India didn't have that kind of dramatic transition, but they basically they went from being a British colony where it was run by these Brits at the top and all these Indian comparadors to the British to play as a middle management, to transition when India became independent from like all this middle now all the top management is gone, but the middle management that formerly run the British India company just moved to the top, so nothing fundamentally changed in India. So this is why India's development has been lagging behind that of China, and where India future lies, that largely depend on how the Indian political development shape up in the coming future. But regardless what it made, I think Indian government will continue to stick to an independent foreign policy. They will not bend the knee to the United States because they want to be respected as a great power. India has an ancient history, as an ancient civilization. They see they're the big boy in the neighborhood. They want to be respected as a big boy. They don't want to play a little hanger on like Canada or UK.
Okay, last question of the night from B1990er. All right, we'll put this up on the screen.
Okay, do you think the outbreak of unrest in the Balkans, in Vietnam, plus what's happening in Francophone Africa, part of the West grasp at the hegemony? Well, I think there's internal development, right? There's some internal development in the Balkans, in Vietnam, in fact, Francophone Africa, especially in Francophone Africa. It's like the African just getting fed up with the French imperialism, and right now the West is reacting. The West is reacting. They're always trying to exploit a situation. And I don't think there's, I don't think the West will be able to do much in Vietnam, because Vietnam, the Vietnamese government is still very much in control. A lot of people don't realize is that the Vietnam government structure is actually very similar to the Chinese government structure, which makes the U.S. action even more hypocritical, because they're saying we got to work with Vietnam to contain Chinese authoritarianism, but the Vietnamese government structure and the Chinese government structure are basically the same. And so this is all about geopolitics, and again, Vietnam and China, they may have their differences, but right now they also have both sides also recognize they have more important trade relationship. In fact, before Biden went to Vietnam, Vietnamese top leadership met with the Chinese leadership. I imagine they probably said something like, "Look, you understand, we're going to try to have ties with America, but we're not trying to backstab you." and so I mean, so I don't think U.S. will make much headway to kind of weaponize Vietnam against China the way they're doing with Philippines, because Philippines has been a U.S. colony for a long time. They have this top tier, the top tier Filipino leadership that have been long in the pockets of the United States, and they have deep ties with the United States. Filipino military force is also have a long relationship with the United States. So there's all these people that U.S. can buy off in the Philippines, and they don't have that kind of dynamic in Vietnam. So I don't think whatever U.S. is trying to do with Vietnam is going to work. Balkans, I'm not familiar with Balkans, so I'm not going to make my comments. I stay within my circle of competence. Like Warren Buffett said, Balkan is outside of my circle of competence. But I think what we're seeing in Francophone Africa is just part of It's a continuation of the decolonialization process that started in the 1950s, 1960s, and I think, you know, I think France's days in Africa is numbered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, thank you again, my brother. Thank you for joining us. You know I got to get you back on here shortly, but I know you have a family, so I know you have to tend to that. Everybody who's watching, please stay. Don't go anywhere yet, because I want to talk to you all about something before we get off the air. But Carl, thank you so much for an outstanding show, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rashid. Thank you.
All right,
Always a pleasure. And anytime you want to talk, you invite me back. I love to talk.
all right, my brother. I'll see you later. Everybody,
All right.
listen. I need you all to hit the like button and subscribe. Also, tomorrow we will have author and international personality and uh, Fox News contributor Martin Saif on the show at noon Central Time, which is 1 Eastern Time, and we'll be doing a channel members interview tomorrow night, tomorrow night, I believe, with Russia Today's journalist Helen Beninsky. She'll be on there. That'll be for channel members, and then we'll air it on later on for the rest of you guys. I just want to take the time out to thank each and every one of you for spending a second or a minute or an hour with us on this platform. Your time is very precious. That is an unrenewable resource. So I hope that this show was able to give you an equal or greater value for the time that you have allotted us this day. Hey, listen, as we go out, know this for sure, that I love you more than words could ever show if you love the truth. But know that the true and living God, he will always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous, because righteousness is the only thing that will carry you out of this thing that is coming upon this world, okay? Hey, everybody, be strong. I love you. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you so much.